Now, we looked at the impact of the Huns and how their power pushed other peoples westward, sparking this wave of movements against the Roman Empire, and the series of events that eventually led to the transition of the western regions of the empire from Roman to German hands. The Roman permission for the Goths to enter the empire in the Balkans and then their revolt culminated in that Roman defeat at Adrianople in 378, where the Goths killed the Roman emperor and eliminated most of the Roman army, and eventually in the Gothic sack of Rome in 410, which shocked the Mediterranean world. Now, this was a political blunder, of course, that could have been averted, but was not due to the poor leadership in the West that I've discussed before. And this speaks to that political divide between East and West that became permanent by 400, with each side having its own leadership. The threat of the Huns absorbed much energy for both sides, for both Constantinople and the capital of the West, Ravenna. And the leadership in the East, bolstered by the wealth of the East, was much more effective at maintaining the security of the Roman Empire, as you can see on this map, where the West will succumb to Germanic forces, but the East remains intact. The Roman Empire survives with its capital at Constantinople. The emperor in Constantinople was able to pay Attila, for example, the leader of the Huns, more than 8,000 pounds of gold in 447 to give the empire a break from Attila's raiding, and such sums would not be possible for the emperor in the West. In fact, to protect the empire in the West, the Western emperor pulled the troops out of Britain to hold the heart of the empire, but then lost Gaul, Spain, and North Africa nonetheless. And a Germanic group called the Vandals took control of North Africa, and in 455, again due to political blunders in the West, the Vandals sack Rome. And by the way, the word Vandal in the English language is derived from this group. And by the 470s, Italy itself was in German hands. You see, in 476, the commander of the military forces in Italy, a Germanic officer, asked the emperor, Romulus Augustulus, for more land for his troops. But the emperor refused, and the commander simply said thank you very much and retired the emperor. The West no longer had an emperor, and the commander simply ruled as king, and he even sent the imperial regalia that the emperor had to Constantinople, recognizing the emperor there and making absolutely no claim on being a Roman emperor because he could not hold this position as a German. He was not the Roman emperor. He was only the king in Italy, with German troops ruling Latin-speaking, mostly Christian Italians. Now, the emperor in Constantinople did not like this one bit, so he invited another Germanic group whom he was having great troubles with, the Ostrogoths, and their king, Theodoric, to go to Italy and take out this commander. And for the emperor in Constantinople, this would have the advantage of, one, getting rid of the Ostrogoths from the Balkans, and they were a major threat, and two, punishing this upstart Germanic commander. Theodoric then would do this quite successfully, and the Ostrogoths would take command of Italy and retain command of much of the Balkans, and I'll discuss more about Theodoric in another video. So let me zoom out a bit to comment more broadly on this change in the West that has occurred over the course of the 5th century, this loss of imperial control of the entire western portions of the Roman Empire to different Germanic groups, the Vandals and the Visigoths and the Franks or Burgundians, Ostrogoths, and so forth. The first point is that most of these Germanic communities are Christian, but they're not Catholic Christian. They are of a different theology. They embrace Arian theology, and you recall in the 4th century, there were 2 ecumenical councils that definitively ruled against Arian theology, were largely brought to Christianity during the rule of emperors who were Arian. So when the Germans move into the empire, their Christianity is of a different theology than the populations they are ruling. From the perspective of the religious establishment of the Roman Empire, these Germanic communities are And they had their own churches separate from the population that they ruled. They even had their own Bible translated into Gothic by the 4th century missionary to the Germans, Ulfilas, who created a Gothic script and translated the scriptures into Gothic. We also see other Germanic communities that are not Christian at all. In fact, they are adhering to their ancestral religious beliefs, and they are called pagans. And these include the Angles and the Franks. In fact, we saw that the Roman Empire pulled the troops out of Britain, and then we have these Germanic communities that are invading Britain, and these are pagan communities, and Christianity will be besieged and diminished in Britain as a result of these migrations and invasions. This is the background out of which will emerge the legend of King Arthur. That King Arthur is this indigenous king fighting for Britain. And what is the historical context of this? Of course, would be this moment. We have this invasion of Britain and against indigenous leaders. So this religious division, where we have Germans embracing Arian theology, included times of persecution, where these Germanic communities, these Germanic kings ruling these Catholic populations, instituted persecution against the church and its believers. And this is particularly the case in Spain and North Africa. So there's religious tension between the minority group that has power and is ruling and the majority religious community. Now, in addition, we have an ethnic and cultural division. These various Germanic peoples functioned as a minority warrior caste ruling much larger populations of primarily Latin-speaking Catholic Christians. So there's this cultural and religious divide. And the Germans were happy to maintain that separation, preserving their cultural practices and their ethnic identity. Now, as a warrior caste with economic and military power, there was on the whole little to no patronage of traditional classical culture or classical education, which was to greatly suffer in this period. But the Germans did see the value of using bishops and aristocratic indigenous elites to help them administer the kingdom.